So, hi everyone, welcome you all. So, what we have done till now, we were coding for a table called issue register, where we have created a simple menu with only one option, that is issue a book. Okay, here what my intention is to ask a book ID if a user knows, and if user do not know book ID, then he can search a book on the basis of the module which we have already created. Okay, so this was the my intention. Then he can come back and then he can simply use a book id. Okay, so here I'm going to take a book id as a variable is equals to, let's say, import enter book id. Otherwise you can customize this function to return a book id, right? I'm not going to do it right now. If you like, you can do it. Okay, use some brain and definitely I'm sure you can do it. And now here I'm going to have a book id. I'm going to have a book id here as well, but this time it is -1. And let's use else if user enters any other book id. Okay, or okay, then we can, what we can do is book id is equals to simply convert this ch1 to book id. Okay, hope you got it. What we are intending to do, we are going to accept a book id. If it is -1, then we are going to search, and then user will manually have to identify the book id and enter it. Otherwise it will simply be converted from ch1. Okay, we need not to specify actually the ch1. This will be perfectly fine. Now what we can do in any of the case, whether we go from this route or with the else route, we will be having some book id, right? And then we have a cursor. So what we are going to do, we are going to use a cursor dot execute to execute the query. And what I'm going to do is, let's say select a string from, okay, I need to insert again. I need to actually find out the customer name. Okay, so what I'm going to do is ask another input, the same as previous one, choice 2 for the customer, that is input, let's say enter customer id -1 if you want to search customer from the database. Okay, and you can use any customer id you want, but this time I will be using whatever customer I have created earlier, right? So this is just a idea. You can use cust id is equals to -1 as a default value. If ch2 is equals to -1, that means you are going to search it. I'm going to pass this time. You need to have the function else, and then we will be having, okay, cust id is equals to the ch2. Okay, so at this point we will be having customer id and the book id. Now we are ready to insert. Okay, so query is somewhat like this: insert into tbl underscore issue. Now we need to specify values. The first, let me see the structure of my table. Then we can see we have this customer, and let's say describe issue. Okay, okay, this was tbl underscore issue, right? So id is the default value. You can use any of the function, but we need to specify this id. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to write a query to actually do it. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a cursor is equals to, let's say select match id from dbl underscore I issue. Okay, that's fine, and we are going to fire this query. Execute. So in this way I will be getting the maximum value, and if I say cursor dot fetch 1, this will give me a tuple, and if I use a 0 here after this, so this will be giving the maximum value. Let's convert into an integer and id, and we are going to increase the value of this id by 1. Okay, let's try to execute this piece of code and check it out whether I'm successfully able to print it, because in the first go I should be getting an error. I can use try and catch block for that. Let's print the id. Okay, so let's execute this piece of code and check it out whether my function is working. Okay, I'm not having any syntax error, but I must be calling this issue function issue menu. That's fine, enter, and now try to execute this piece of code. Okay, I have to enter the choice 1 and then process is finished, because again silly mistake. Let's be a string. Let's run this program once again. 1, enter. So it says book id. I know book id is 1, that's perfectly fine. Then it says a customer id, then I know there is 1 in 3 customers, so 1, and I'm getting error. Okay, now see what is the problem, what is the cause of this error. Type error argument must be string, a byte like representation non type. Okay, so before using this, okay, I'm going to specify it as id and check it out whether what it returns. I'm also coding 1, 1 and 1, and we are getting none actually. So if we are getting none, then I must use id as well. Okay, so let's say if id of 0 is equals to none, then id is equals to, let's say, 1. Okay, so we are changing the data type to 1, else I must be using id is equals to id of 0 plus 1. Okay, that's fine. Let's do this and try to print this one again. So 1, 1 and 1, you can see I'm getting 1. So because here I have chosen the id is equals to 1, so I'm ready to go. Hope you got it. I'm creating actually id which will increment every time I'm going to insert a value. So if let us try to code and you will understand how it is going about. So query is equals to, let's say, insert into table name is tbl underscore issue, and we have to specify the id. Okay, we'll use bracket placeholder, that is for id. I'm going to use id. Okay, so dot format, here I'm using an id. Okay, and then I need let's say, let's check it out, our table, that is date of issue. That will be anything you can ask. Input date of issue, comma, and here I'm going to use a very static date 2020-06, and let's say 15. Okay, this will be my date for the issue. You can use anything, or you can take a user entry for this also. Okay, so to means keep this video short, I'm using a static one, otherwise you can use a input. Okay, and then let us check out what is the other parameter I have to specify: customer ID and book ID. So here CID and BID is the other two values. Let's say BID, and what are other values? Return date, that is null for me now, and the last one is remark, that is also null. Okay, so these will be certain values. Let us try to give all the parameters. That is book ID, and before that we have a CID. Okay, or cust ID. Okay, so all these are the three parameters which we have to specify here, and let us see whether I am successfully able to create this string. Perfectly fine. And if you want to print this one, you can use, let's say, query print. This is always a good idea to print this query string so that you can check it out whether this is correct or not. Okay, so let's run this program. And one, this time my book ID is 1, perfectly fine, but customer is 3. And now you can check it out. I'm getting some error because it says what it says. She want to finish the code page line number 36. Okay, I must be using the name. ID is equals to somewhat like this, CID is equals to this, and finally BID is equals to this. Okay, let us run this program and check it out now. 1 and 1 and 3. So still I'm getting error. We have a single quote. Okay, this is a curly bracket. I shouldn't be using a curly bracket. It should be a simple parenthesis, right? 1 1 and 3, and see, insert into TBL issue values 1 itna, itna, itna. Okay, that's now what we need to do. We need to simply execute this piece of a query. So cursor dot execute query, and then finally MySQL or my connection dot commit. Okay, so this will do for us. Let us try to execute and check out in MySQL whether I'm able to insert the record or not. Okay, 1 and 1 and 3, enter, and see in MySQL, select asterisk from tbl underscore issue. Okay, you can check it out. My first row is inserted, and check out the ID. Okay, now time to check whether this piece of a code is working or not. Let's run this program. Before doing this, I need to specify queries executed and print book issued, right? Press any key to continue, whatever. Let us run this program and check it out. 1 and 1, and let's say this time customer is also 1, so second book is issued. And now check out, see, ID is 1, and for the next time I'm going to get a second ID. So see, I'm getting the max value and incrementing it by 1. That's why I'm getting 2. So every time I'm going to insert, this value will automatically be incremented by 1. Okay, so see, I have issued 2 books. First book is to customer 3, and um, the second book is issued to customer 1. Now let's see if I want to see select asterisk from both the table, that is tbl underscore issue issue, let's say t, and let's have a customer. right? Customer, let's say C. Okay, let's have a join condition. T is equal to dot first ID is equals to C dot cust ID. That's perfectly fine. Let's write the query. Okay, let's see this one. So you can check it out. It's I'm good to go. Here you can see the first book is issued to Jiva and second book is issued to Ram. Okay, so this is how we can uh, get generate the report. Same thing we have to do in our example. You can check it out. Accept a customer name and display his her book issue and record. Okay, accept a book ID and display book detail and the list of customer who have borrowed the book. Okay, accept a date from user and display the list of book issued and returned along the customer details. Hope you can easily now grasp the concept how we can do these by using a join query, right? So I'm giving you one more day to do it, and next day we will write code for these. So bye bye for now and have a nice day.